Tonight on CBC Vancouver News.
We're basically not meeting with one side of my family anymore, so that's going to be really hard on the kids, I think.
New COVID restrictions and how they're being handled as we inch closer to Christmas. Also,
if it's open, I'm excited because that shortens my trip by another almost 2 hours.
a crucial BC route opens again, what it means for linking the Lower Mainland, the interior, and the rest of Canada. And
I would like my husband to come here so that he can be a part of our lives.
questions and frustration as families torn apart keep waiting for immigration updates, pushed longer by the pandemic.
This is CBC Vancouver News.
Good evening and thanks for joining us. Well, we're seeing long lineups tonight at COVID testing centres across the Fraser Valley and Vancouver coastal health regions. So long that some are wrapping block after block. Dan Burrett joins us live with more on this. Dan, how many hours are people actually having to wait?
In some cases, close to 4 hours, Anita, and there aren't many testing centres to go to, at least in coastal health. The lineups for the testing centre near Cambie and 33rd, known as St. Vincent, are listed at just over 3 hours at last check. A testing centre on the North Shore has a wait of almost 4 hours. Other testing centres in Powell River, Pemberton, Whistler, Squamish, downtown Vancouver, and at Children's Hospital are either closed or by appointment only. This testing centre in downtown Vancouver had a line around the block, as you mentioned, and there were also lineups at the testing centre at YVR. Just before 1 p.m. today, though, Coastal Health tweeted out a warning, saying it was closing the YVR testing site and redirecting people to Cambie and 33rd, already busy to, quote, better manage demand for the next hour. But just before 2:30 p.m., it was reopened. Coastal Health tells CBC News it did so to manage a lot of people, some trying to get to the testing centre, others heading to the airport. Anita.
Okay, Dan, we're also sensing a lot of frustration. We heard stories of people perhaps sleeping overnight trying to get tested. So what are health officials saying about these long lines?
Well, CBC News asked both Coastal Health and Fraser Health to speak with us about long testing waits, but they declined. The BC Health Ministry has emphasized that people who do not have COVID symptoms don't need to wait for a test. But we are getting a COVID update from Dr. Bonnie Henry and Adrian Dix tomorrow at 1:30. Along with a technical briefing beforehand. They usually hold those to give us a lot of detail on any new measures. We're told this will be about boosters, but Public Safety Minister Mike Farnworth will be there as well. And he has announced restrictions before. We'll bring that all to you live here on CBC British Columbia tomorrow at 1:30.
Yes, I'm sure a lot of eyes will be on that news conference tomorrow. Dan, thank you. Well, these lineups come as more than 2,550 British Columbians have tested positive over the weekend, an average of 850 a day, leading to yet another steep climb in BC's moving average. 3 more people have died from COVID-19. We have reached another milestone, though, in vaccinations. More than 100,000 kids 5 to 11 have gotten at least 1 dose. Now, out of those new weekend cases, Vancouver Coastal Health continues to trend the highest out of all health authorities. And in an effort to help restaurants stay afloat, the province is extending its cap on food delivery fees.
You know, we're in very challenging times still. We've still got about 60% of our table service restaurants that are losing money and going into more debt each month. So anything that the government can do to help stabilize our costs and to help our industry get through this pandemic.
The cap limits food delivery companies like Skip the Dishes and Uber Eats from charging restaurants more than 15%. An additional 5% cap is also extended to things like processing fees. BC restaurants have seen delivery sales triple since the onset of the pandemic. And we'll be hearing more from restaurants later in the show, with new restrictions for COVID-19 coming into place into the province today. Well, it's great news for BC's supply chain and those trying to move between the Lower Mainland and the interior. The Coquihalla is now reopened to trucks and buses just 5 weeks after catastrophic storms washed it out. As Brady Strachan reports, it's being called an incredible feat of engineering.
The big rigs are rolling again, hauling everything from consumer goods to cattle feed on the Coquihalla Highway. 5 weeks ago, this major transportation artery was severed by floods and landslides. But after a round-the-clock construction effort, the Coquihalla is now open to commercial trucks and intercity buses.
Well, it's like a blessing.
For almost a month, truck drivers had to use an alternate route, Highway 3, a windy and steep roadway to get goods to the interior. Trucker Rocky Sukdev-Shuker says it added hours to his trip.
It's been like a real disaster going on number 3. Every time I'm on there, every trip, not just once or twice, but every trip, there's always an accident. Truckers colliding, cars in the ditch, trucks are turning too fast.
The initial estimate to reopen the highway was in late January. To have it reopened today, several weeks ahead of schedule for commercial traffic, is being called a major engineering feat by some truckers.
Unbelievable, unbelievable. Like when you saw the damage on the bridges and the highway washed out, I didn't think it was going to be this winter. And here we are December 20th and it's open.
The economic impact of having trucks on the Coquihalla again is huge, as it restores the regular flow of goods from the Port of Vancouver to the rest of Canada.
This truly is the beginning of stability, the beginning of getting us back to a place where we can move goods that we all rely on every day.
It also means non-essential travel can resume again on other highways starting tomorrow. Welcome news for ski resorts and tourism operators.
If people can travel by air or by road, I'm sure we will have a very good season.
While traveling on the Coquihalla is limited, reopening it is a significant sign that BC is recovering from a disaster that crippled the province for weeks. Brady Strachan, CBC News, near Merritt, BC.
For those left homeless by this flooding, this time of year can be particularly challenging. Renee Filipponi is speaking with 2 families who are living in basement suites, unable to return home.
So the water kind of went all the way, filled the whole thing.
The damage is overwhelming for the Bowmans, who were evacuated in the middle of the night as water poured into their Merritt home.
Oh, Papa, look at the carpet.
It will be months before they're able to go home, something the children long for.
I kind of miss, like how it looks. It looks all dirty, and it used to look all shiny.
Christmas will be spent in the 1-bedroom basement suite of this family member's home, where they will focus on what matters.
We're all safe, we're all taken care of, and we still have each other. In the end, just the material things, you know, they come and go, they can be taken away from you so soon.
More than 1,000 people in BC are still out of their homes, spending the holiday season picking up what's left of their lives and figuring out what can be salvaged. Lee McLeod is still living in a Kelowna hotel where he doesn't want to spend Christmas.
To not be home for Christmas, well, that's going to be a little bit, you know, it's a kind of a loneliness sort of a deal, eh? Well, loneliness and homesick.
To make this season brighter, this donation center in Abbotsford is giving out food and toys.
We're doing what we can do to hopefully make what will probably be a very sad Christmas for a lot of people, hopefully a happier one.
Krista Spitters shows up with a box of toys to donate, despite losing her home and farm to the floods. Seeing how the community has come together is emotional, and she is glad she has family to stay with this Christmas.
I really have a hard time thinking about those that don't have, and it hurts.
And that's why this season of giving is so important here, especially when so many have lost so much. Renee Filipponi, CBC News, Abbotsford.
And the city of Abbotsford has rescinded its boil water advisory for the Sumas Prairie. The advisory came into effect just over a month ago after that flooding. The city now says water no longer needs to be boiled for drinking and or food preparation. A water supply station, which had been set up for residents, will no longer be available after today. Many of BC's seniors have experienced increased vulnerability since the onset of the pandemic, and tonight, new funding for those at risk of becoming homeless. The $720,000 grant from the province aims to connect vulnerable seniors in Vancouver and Nanaimo with housing, as well as mental health and addiction supports. These supports are offered to seniors in the interior and north as well.
They are often the most vulnerable people in our communities. They have faced discrimination and marginalization that can alienate them from the care that is available in community, that can alienate them from housing.
The province says research shows that seniors who age in a residence of their choosing are less likely to experience mental health and addictions challenges. BC's seniors advocate tells CBC she's pleased with the funding announcement. The pandemic has been particularly challenging for some families trying to immigrate to Canada. Application backlogs mean many loved ones have been separated and anxiously await reunions with spouses and children. As John Hernandez reports, the federal government pledges to pick up the pace.
I am stuck.
Faustina Mambuere says she's hanging on by a thread.
I don't know what to do with my life at the moment.
She's from Zimbabwe and moved to BC to change her life. She now lives in Vancouver. Her husband is also from her home country, but is currently working in the U.S. They filed an application to become permanent residents in Canada well over a year ago, but there's been little progress.
There's nothing going on with it. Absolutely nothing. Like, I have no idea what's going on with it. I don't know whether someone has looked at it, someone is going to look at it in the future.
So Mambuere has mostly been raising their daughter alone.
I would like my husband to come here so that he can be a part of our lives. He's missing out on a lot of things. He missed out on his daughter's first birthday. He's missing out on so many milestones.
According to recent data from Immigration, Refugees and Citizenship Canada, the ministry had a pandemic-induced backlog of 1.8 million immigration applications as of October 27th. That included more than 500,000 permanent residence applications.
Where there are kids in the relationship, I feel like that should somehow prioritize those applications.
This immigration lawyer says it's made a bad situation even worse for separated families.
It's really broken down, I believe, the real impetus of what immigration should be doing, which is emphasizing family reunification and getting spouses together sooner.
But change could be coming soon. According to Prime Minister Trudeau's recent mandate letter to Canada's immigration minister, the ministry is asked to strengthen the residency process by introducing electronic applications for family reunification and implement a program to issue temporary resident status for spouses and children abroad while they await their permanent residency applications. A hopeful sign, but there's still a question of when.
But it's one thing to say it versus to actually implement policies.
Until then, for families on the waiting end, every day that passes is valuable time together lost. John Hernandez, CBC News, Vancouver.
An arrest has been made in connection with yesterday's fatal stabbing at Metrotown in Burnaby. Police say the victim and suspect are known to each other and there is no risk to the public. Yesterday, just before noon, investigators responded to a call and flooded the parking garage of the busy shopping center. They found a victim with stab wounds who later died in hospital. Police say a snowboarder who died Saturday at Silver Star Resort had been boarding out of bounds. The man is in his 40s and he was found unconscious in an area of complex terrain closed because of poor conditions. A passing skier spotted the snowboarder, who was from Vernon. Efforts to revive him were unsuccessful. The coroner service is investigating. And an Nanaimo man has been banned from fishing for life. Scott Steer is guilty of 5 offenses under the Fisheries Act. Just after midnight on a spring day last year, he was found illegally fishing for crab in the Vancouver harbor. Steer was advised to stop by law enforcement, but took off in his boat. After a high-speed chase on the water, he was arrested and 250 live crabs were taken and released back into the water. Steer must also spend 6 months in jail minus time served. And as temperatures plummet across BC, aid organizations are expanding shelter spaces for people living on the streets.
The Extreme Weather Act is put in place whenever the weather meets certain criteria. So that could be temperatures at or below 0 degrees, freezing rain, snow accumulation. We have a number of criteria that we look at when we make that decision. From there, we put the Extreme Weather Act into place. And what that does is it allows us to open up a shelter site. This year we have one shelter. It's the Salvation Army, located at 525 Johnson Street.
The Greater Victoria Coalition to End Homelessness opened a cold weather center at the Salvation Army. That happened last night. It offers around 30 beds. At the same time, the Port Alberni Shelter Society says it expects its shelters to be at capacity. It says the unhoused community continues to grow and the province needs to help expand shelter spaces. In Delta, the city, in partnership with several aid organizations, have established a weather shelter at the New Hope Church. It will be open nightly whenever an extreme weather alert is activated. Given the COVID-19 public health restrictions, the new Delta shelter can only accommodate a maximum of 15 guests per night. Johanna is off this week, and so we welcome Nick Czernkovich joining us for the forecast. Nick, it's been pretty frosty here, I must say, waking up every morning and the ground is just a sheet of ice.
A sheet of ice, you've got snow on the rooftops. Yeah, definitely cold. In fact, we're already sitting below the 0 mark. Now, we just tipped above the 0 mark through the afternoon, but we're sitting down at -1 degree right now at Vancouver International Airport. There's a look at some of the temperatures across the region. Now, to put this in perspective for you, the average for this time of year is about 6 degrees. The average high today, we hit 2.2 degrees. When you look at the lows, the average low just above the 0 mark, last night -3.6. So definitely chilly out there. And we do have some pretty significant weather to talk about. Now, we've got clear skies tonight, and that's actually going to help to drop temperatures through the overnight. But into tomorrow, it's this system that we're tracking, and it's going to bring with it a mess of precipitation. We've got special weather statements in effect, including Metro Vancouver for mixed precipitation, the potential for freezing rain there as well. We've got winter storm watches across much of southern British Columbia and warnings to the north there as well. Now, what we're looking at as the system pushes forward is some sunshine through the morning, but then very quickly into the afternoon, cloud cover moves through, and the rain-snow line is basically right down at sea level. And that means we've got a mix of rain, freezing rain, and even some accumulating snows in the Metro Vancouver area. So lots to talk about with that. And it doesn't get much better toward the end of the week. I'll have your full forecast coming up in just a bit.
Well, I'll have my fingers crossed for a white Christmas, Nick.
You know what? I might be able to deliver.
Okay. Well, we'll talk to you soon, I'm hoping.
All right.
Thanks. Let's take you back to COVID-19 now. Today is the first day expanded COVID rules took effect across BC. As Benit Brach reports, while some welcome the new restrictions, others do feel like it's putting a damper on another holiday season.
For Cherish Dixon and her 2 kids, these new restrictions mean pushing Christmas celebrations to next year.
We're basically not meeting with one side of my family anymore, so that's going to be really hard on the kids.
Indoor gatherings are limited to your household plus 10 guests, and that's hard news to swallow for many.
Just a lot of the cultural stuff in the community.
Some of my family is abroad, and given the new restrictions, they may be unable to come home.
Others are hopeful for small celebrations.
Small enough that we were still able to have all of our gatherings that were already planned.
And larger venues with more than 1,000 seats are limited to 50% capacity. The Canucks have already had to cancel 2 games so far because of rising cases.
It's not ideal. You want to be playing hockey. You want to be on the ice and with your teammates. But again, the players' safety and health and family safety and health comes first.
Sports tournaments are also on pause. For the second year in a row, Vancouver's Minor Hockey Association had to cancel its Christmas tournament fundraiser.
It's just a lot of time and effort put in, but what are you going to do? These are the requirements.
Restaurants are also affected with different rules in different health regions, but everyone has to stay seated. No mingling, meaning no Christmas or New Year's Eve parties, and that's bad for business.
Christmas parties that had organized 3-course meals, staff events that are upwards of 30, 40, 50 people. So it's definitely detrimental to the business for sure.
On the bright side, unlike other provinces, restaurants can still operate at full capacity. For now, as the exhaustion sets in for people across BC, the only thing to do is wait and see and continue to hope. Benit Brach, CBC News, Vancouver.
An abandoned mother dog and her 5 puppies are now in the care of a foster home on Vancouver Island, but they need more help. Mama Celeste was abandoned by her owner, and when she got to the SPCA, she was emaciated and struggling to survive. Because of her low body weight, Celeste is on a strict refeeding program to reduce and put nutrients back into her system. The mother dog will be in care for at least another month until she reaches normal body weight. Then she'll be put up for adoption along with her puppies. Well, long lines at COVID testing sites are a problem across the country. Rapid tests are still not an option for most here in BC, and the stress is building. Experts say Omicron is spreading so fast the numbers are getting away from us. More on all of that coming up. Thanks for staying with us during our commercial-free live stream. 2 para-athletes on PEI are encouraging others with disabilities to get involved with CrossFit. The pair say it's not just about the competitive side of the sport for them. They say high-intensity training can also help maintain mobility for some. Here's their story.
One of the other CrossFit gyms here in the island, Court 6, they host a yearly competition called the Trinity Games. And they reached out ahead of the competition and said that they would like some kind of adaptive presence. It's a team competition, and eventually we settled on myself and another adaptive competitor teaming up with 2 able-bodied athletes. And we just sort of modified the workouts to what our abilities were. So I have cerebral palsy. So what is affected for me is primarily my balance and coordination. There's kind of a separation between like CrossFit or functional fitness as part of your everyday life, and then the competitive side of it. Functional meaning movements that can translate into your everyday life. So whether that be as a wheelchair user, being able to bend over and pick something up. In my case, where I have some ability to stand and walk, that would be being able to get out of the chair, building up endurance in the legs. Lots of people who incorporate CrossFit into their everyday life don't necessarily compete or have a desire to do so.
I do a little bit more than that when I'm at home here, or I have been over the last couple of weeks, but when we were at the gym, 2 sessions a week was giving me more benefit than a full week's worth of triathlon training and work. It allows me to use the muscle control that I still have and increase that a little bit. Most of my paralysis is in the lower extremities, so doing a little bit of CrossFit helps me with the strength in my upper body.
It's got great mental benefits as well as the physical.
And I feel like it does. I feel like it gives me something to focus on. It gives me an outlet that I wouldn't have otherwise.
So I'd love people just to, disabled people just to kind of get more into functional fitness as part of their everyday lives.
As Omicron cases skyrocket, we've seen Canadians and people here in this province scrambling to get tested in any way possible. Now, those rapid tests you can do at home have become hot items. And as Chris O'Neill Yates reports, a sharp bump in PCR tests means results are taking longer.
As the number of Omicron cases grows, so too are the lineups to get free rapid test kits. Quebec started rolling out 4.3 million rapid test kits Monday through pharmacies. Demand was instant and intense, with long lines forming before some even opened their doors.
Because of Omicron now, it's like spreading all over the place, so it's only another measure of to be precautious.
My life is important and everyone else's life is important also.
Good morning, sir. How are you? Thank you very much. Have a good day.
In Toronto, a pop-up with free tests ran out in minutes as people crowded in to get them. Ontario has been handing out kits in high traffic areas.
So I was walking in circles. I finally found an end of the line, but it wasn't good enough. I woke up at 6 a.m., thought I'd get here a bit early, but it wasn't good enough.
If you can work from home and you do not need
Epidemiologist Dr. Christopher Labos finds the frenzy for rapid test kits worrisome because they could actually cause further spread.
If you stay home, if you don't interact with other people, your risk of getting COVID is zero. So the best and the safest thing people can do is stay home. And then eventually we will get over this supply-demand imbalance.
The demand for PCR tests is also surging across the country. In Ottawa, public health says it's reached unprecedented levels. Some report waiting days for a test appointment and longer for results.
They're saying 3-day wait, where before, when I had it done a long time ago, it was like I got it the next day.
The best advice while you wait?
When in doubt, stay home. That's the safest thing you could do at this point, at least.
At this point, many experts say if you think you have COVID, just act like you do. Test or no test. Chris O'Neill-Yates, CBC News, Vancouver.
And with health officials scrambling to stem the rising tide of Omicron cases, the race is on to get a third dose of the COVID-19 vaccine into millions of arms here. Long lines in parts of the country today show that demand is high, but as Marina von Stackelberg reports, it's not as easy as it seems.
They lined up for hours, hoping to score one of the limited number of booster shots at this Toronto walk-in clinic. They already struck out trying to book their third dose through Ontario's online system.
There was nothing available, so these clinics are your only option at the moment if you need to get it. I went on the booking site this morning right at 8 o'clock, and their booking was starting for January 20th, so I wanted to rush down here and see if I can get one of these 400.
It only took 15 minutes for every appointment to be snapped up through Ottawa Public Health. The health authority tweeting, "We apologize for the inconvenience and are working hard to add more capacity and availability." A lucky few managed to get a spot at this Ottawa clinic. It offered bookings for essential workers and those who are pregnant.
It's really nice to see someone kind of picking up the slack for our provincial government.
Provinces across the country are scrambling to get more shots into arms. Saskatchewan also opened up boosters this morning for those 18 and older. This walk-in site in Regina had to turn people away.
Yeah, we're here like before the malls open. We didn't expect this long waiting lines.
Unlike previous waves, Canada has no shortage of doses. The federal government has procured enough. The issue is distribution. The provinces scaled down their vaccine infrastructure in the last few months. But with or without Omicron, giving out boosters was something provinces should have been prepared for, says this infectious disease specialist.
We have very little in the way of capacity from a personnel standpoint. Like, there has been such significant attrition from healthcare over the last 18 months that we are really working with a skeleton staffing in most areas.
Some Canadians are booking booster shots into February. Health officials from several provinces say they're working to reduce those wait times. Marina von Stackelberg, CBC News, Toronto.
To the other coast now. After years of uncertainty, the fishing industry in Newfoundland and Labrador has reason to celebrate. As Terry Roberts reports, it's had its most profitable year ever, in part because of the pandemic.
This is the big prize, snow crab, a bottom-dwelling shellfish, and the #1 reason why the Newfoundland and Labrador fishery shattered records this year.
Directly into the pockets of fish harvesters in this province has been over $1 billion.
For the first time, the value of seafood landed in the province surpassed $1 billion.
I've been at it over 40 years, and it's by far the best season we ever had. Catch rates were good, prices were excellent.
In a curious twist, the pandemic is partly responsible for this shellfish bonanza. Last year, at the height of the pandemic, the all-important seafood buffet practically disappeared from hotels and restaurants. So pre-cooked and frozen crab and lobster started turning up in grocery stores, and consumers responded in a big way. Well, now this year, the restaurant business has also bounced back,
setting the stage for a market like never before, with harvesters paid $7.60 for a pound of crab, more than double last year's price, meaning a lot of extra cash in the pockets of harvesters, benefiting the economy and hundreds of coastal communities.
I see some of my people now getting new vehicles and doing stuff to their house, and they're spending money because they got a few extra dollars to spend this year. Like, it's unreal, and it's nice to be able to see them, not only me, them be able to afford to be able to do a few different things that they couldn't do in the past.
Harvesters are certainly pleased. They're able to reinvest in their vessels and gear and certainly get ahead.
The lobster harvest was also record-breaking.
So people who've struggled for a number of years now and not done really well, we're talking along the south and the west coast, they're making certainly good money and are really able to draw young people into this industry. There's more interest in that fishery now than there ever has been.
And it looks like the bonanza will continue. Industry leaders say all the ingredients are there for a string of good years to come for Newfoundland's crab and lobster fisheries. Terry Roberts, CBC News, St. John's.
We're seeing the scale of destruction in the central Philippines 3 days after Typhoon Rai tore through parts of the country and left at least 375 people dead. About 500 people were injured after the powerful storm slammed into the region last week, with more than 50 others still missing. Officials say the death toll will likely increase. Massive cleanup and repair work is ongoing to restore communication and power lines in many towns and villages. Many refrigeration houses with large stocks of COVID-19 vaccines don't have electricity and are running out of fuel. Another big worry is limited access to food and clean drinking waters in the hardest hit areas. Expanded health restrictions are once again costing Canadians their jobs. Depending on the industry, new rules mean some people can't earn an income, putting pressure on Ottawa to bring back benefits. Stay with us.
Coquihalla is more than just the name of British Columbia's newest superhighway. It's also a name that has become synonymous with scandal here. The BC government was in a hurry to have the Coquihalla ready in time for Expo 86, even if that meant paving in the middle of a snowstorm. The highway was ready for Expo, but in the rush, costs ballooned hundreds of millions of dollars. Today, a 5-month inquiry into the Coquihalla project handed its conclusions over to Premier Bill Vander Zalm. The report says the previous government, Bill Bennett's government, lost control of the project, but deliberately kept that secret from the public and from the legislature. It says the government hid costs for political reasons. In short, there was a cover-up. But the report stopped short of naming who was responsible for the cover-up, and the Premier isn't ready to push further.
I'm not out to nail anyone on this. I think it's we can look back and make judgments whichever way we wish it, but I don't think there's any point in mud stirring or nailing anyone for anything.
But the opposition says the Coquihalla inquiry should not be allowed to end here.
Who gave the orders? How did we get into this jackpot? Who gave the orders, and when were those orders given? Who would you
The man who has the answers to those questions, former Premier Bill Bennett, was in Kelowna today. He wasn't talking. As for the highway, in spite of its cost, it's been a disappointment to some. Less than 2 years after it opened, stretches paved in the winter months have had to be resurfaced. The report says the cost of the highway was deliberately underestimated, and it speculates had the truth been known at the outset, the project would likely never have been given the go-ahead. Still, highways are political monuments in British Columbia, and Bill Bennett has called the Coquihalla his proudest achievement. Keith Folk, CBC News, Vancouver.
After a 1-hour flight, the Belzberg family touched down on the west coast in their private jet. Sam Belzberg, perhaps the most prominent member of the family and the power behind the First City Trust Company, had rushed to Calgary early yesterday when his brother Hyman was kidnapped. Although his departure was rather hasty, Sam Belzberg evidently made 2 important phone calls before he left. One, to have an electronic alarm system at his home repaired, and another to a company that supplies round-the-clock bodyguards. The Beltsburg home is protected by a tall, dense hedge of holly bushes backed up by steel fencing. But until today, sources say Sam Beltsburg never worried much about electronic surveillance. However, when he heard that his brother Hyman had been kidnapped at gunpoint, all that changed. Now the entire family lives inside what amounts to a walled fortress, and the alarm system is being completely revamped. And the man who runs this city's largest VIP security agency says hard times and unemployment will make things even worse in the future.
I think we're going to see a lot more of cases where we're dealing with $5, $10, maybe $20,000 worth of ransom. It's easier to get. And I think we're going to see a lot more of this type of thing because of the desperation out in the communities.
Here are some of the stories we're following tonight on CBC Vancouver News.
The Coquihalla is a little easier traveling, so it definitely make the trip go a little quicker.
The Coquihalla Highway has reopened to commercial traffic and intercity buses a month after it was significantly damaged by floods and mudslides. It's the main route connecting Metro Vancouver and the Fraser Valley. Permanent repairs will take longer to make, and tomorrow, Highway 3 is going to open up to non-essential traffic. A Nanaimo man has been banned from fishing for life. Scott Steer is guilty of 5 offenses under the Fisheries Act. Just after midnight on March Day last year, he was found illegally fishing for crab in the Vancouver harbor.
So it's definitely detrimental to the business, for sure.
Well, new health restrictions are in place in BC as of today. This means indoor personal gatherings are limited to 1 household plus 10 guests or just 1 additional household, as long as everyone over 12 is vaccinated. The province is planning to unveil plans tomorrow to further use rapid antigen tests and quite possibly more restrictions. And speaking of new restrictions here, new rules across the country on businesses and workers have taken a toll. This time around, there's no broad support programs to fall back on. New federal legislation did come into effect last week, but as Ashley Burke explains, so far, no one can use it.
Chef Harriet Clooney's restaurant is already closed 2 days a week because of the pandemic. Now new restrictions mean new cuts.
It's just the worst feeling in the world.
Ontario recently slashed capacity at restaurants to 50%. Now Clooney's cutting staff hours just before the holidays, and new legislation won't help. The federal government's offering $300 a week to workers directly impacted by COVID-19, but only if there's a lockdown, not restrictions.
It's not right, and it's not helpful. It makes everything really precarious, and it doesn't put the government in a position that they want either, because then we're going to have to lay off a whole bunch of workers.
The new legislation also provides wage and rent subsidies to businesses, but again, only applies if there's a lockdown.
With the removal of those support programs, we expect that in the spring of 2022, we're going to see a hollowing out of the business community across Canada like we have just not seen before.
The NDP doesn't just want business support, it wants to bring back CERB.
We are clearly still wrestling with the pandemic. The time for income support is clearly not past.
But Chef Clooney says restaurants like hers need help and fast. If not, they're considering closing for the month of January.
It's the worst thing I ever want to do as an employer if we don't need to. But given the restrictions, given the variant and the level of alarm that needs to be raised, it may be the most prudent thing.
Prudent, but painful, she says. Meanwhile, the government says it's now looking at if it should adjust the new legislation so it's more flexible. Ashley Burke, CBC News, Ottawa.
And Foreign Affairs Minister Melanie Joly has tested positive for COVID-19 after taking a rapid test. She says she's following public health guidelines and is in isolation. She'll continue to work virtually until she gets the results of her PCR test. The Prime Minister's office says no one else in the Liberal cabinet has to isolate because Joly hasn't seen any of her colleagues for more than a week. Well, it's nearly the long night of winter solstice, meaning the days will ever so slightly get a little longer, a little brighter as the season continues. What to look forward to next? And at 6:38, oh, what a beautiful shot of the moon over Vancouver. Coming up, Nick Czernkovich with more on snow possibilities. I, of course, just want to know if we're finally going to have a white Christmas in the Lower Mainland.
She's got the usual snapping turtle attitude. She's just dramatic, and this is what we like to see.
Good morning, Ontario Turtle Conservation Centre.
This is a very young turtle. It was found in the wild but had a fractured shell from being hit by a car. So it's just had some temporary tape put on. My name is Sue Carstairs. I'm a veterinarian and executive and medical director here at the Ontario Turtle Conservation Centre. Our mission here is treat, rehabilitate, and release turtles that are injured or ill. We do identify them by number, and we try not to name them. These are wild animals, and they're going to go back into the wild, so we want to respect that. This year, we have admitted 1,451 turtles. Most of the turtles are admitted due to vehicle trauma, so they are hit by cars on the road. When she first came in, you could barely tell that she was alive. She was hit by a car. The car straddled her and scraped off a big portion of her shell, right down to her spine. This whole area was missing and bloody. It was open right into her body cavity. Turtles feel pain just like we do. They don't have a voice, they're not crying, but you can see when the pain medication takes effect, they're just like, ah. We x-ray all turtles when they come in, and that's how we found out that she was carrying eggs. It's kind of neat because you can see all the eggs. These are all snapping turtle eggs. How wonderful that not only can we save her, but all her babies. Those little guys working hard to come out. We leave them to just come out at their own pace. I couldn't have timed that better. If she hadn't come in, she would have died. If I had to give 733 a name, I would probably call her Spunky. She's just got that attitude back, and this has taken several months to get her to this stage. So compared to when she came in, it's night and day. She's feeling like she's ready to go. She just doesn't know that she's not quite ready to go yet. The fact that they can regenerate some of their spinal tissue and go on to recover from spinal cord injuries that no other species can, pretty phenomenal. When it comes time to release them, we scout out the closest appropriate body of water to where they were found. Apart from the beauty of intrinsically of them and their right to exist, we can learn so much from them, and they're so useful to us in the environment, keeping that healthy. Watch for them on the road. They can look like rocks in the road, they can look like potholes, especially if there's a wetland on one or either side of the road. Just slow down and watch for them.
In the year 2050, how will BC look? From agriculture to cities, how will climate change life? Don't miss 2050 Degrees of Change, a CBC Vancouver original podcast, now available.
Well, if you're growing weary of shorter days and shrinking sunlight, not to worry. Tomorrow is winter solstice, and as Fiona Odlum explains, that means a little more daylight is just around the corner.
The winter solstice marks the first day of astronomical winter. It's also the day with the shortest amount of sunlight. But what actually happens on the day of the winter solstice? This year, it's happening on Tuesday, December 21st at exactly 9:59 a.m. Central Standard Time. We know the exact minute because it's when the Earth's axis is pointed the furthest away from the sun. This means the sun's path is as low in the sky as it can get, even at high noon. A fun thing to do on the day of the winter solstice is to head out around noon. that's where you'll see your shadow, and it'll be the longest shadow you'll see all year. It's all thanks to the angle of the sun. Try standing in the same place on the summer solstice, and you will barely see your shadow. While the solstice does mark the beginning of winter, it also marks the beginning of more sunlight. So enjoy that sunshine arriving soon.
That's the CBC's Fiona Odlum reporting from Regina, and now we have Nick Czernkovich. Nick, I don't know about you, but I sure could use even a couple seconds of more sunlight, daylight, anything.
Yeah. I know. I don't know if I can give you much in the way of sunshine, except for maybe a sliver of it right when the winter solstice kicks in. In the morning, we'll see it, and then it disappears, and we're into the messy weather. However, I did promise you the chance of a white Christmas, and I think we're actually going to see it. And it all comes down to this. This is sort of a big picture of the temperature trend. Now, generally, we've been sitting below the average for this time of year. As we move through Tuesday, we're going to see the temperature staying more or less the same. Wednesday, we get a very small push of warm air just across the lower mainland there, and then it drops. And watch this into Thursday and Friday, of course, Christmas Eve, and then Christmas Day into Saturday. The cold Arctic air pushes south, and that is going to bring with it not just cold temperatures, but some of the snowfall that a lot of us have been hoping for as well. So we're going to come to that in long-range forecast in just a second. Here's a look at the first weather maker that's moving through tomorrow. Now, we've got special weather statements in effect, including Metro Vancouver. The story here is we're going to see mixed precipitation, meaning freezing rain, some snowfall and rainfall as well. We've also got winter storm watches across the south. They're likely to see some freezing rain warnings with this. We've got warm air aloft falling into colder air, and so what's going to happen is a lot of freezing precipitation down here. For tomorrow morning, there's your sliver of sunshine. Actually, at 7:59 is when the winter solstice, that's when it officially begins. We'll see a little sliver of sunshine, and then it clouds over into the afternoon. We've got rain showers, but then as we move through sort of Tuesday night into Wednesday, as the temperatures start to drop, we'll see some mixing in the precipitation, likely some snowfall in places like Burnaby Mountain, maybe 2 to 4 centimeters of snow. We get a push of warm air back over to rainfall, and then the system sort of clears out as we move through Wednesday into Thursday morning. So a couple days of sort of messy weather. Thursday, a bit of a break, and then as we get into Friday, we've got another system moving through. Gusty winds as well in the forecast there, so watch for that. Gusts up to about 50 kilometers per hour. Now, here's what you were waiting for. There's a look at the 5-day forecast. A little bit of messy weather there, but Friday into Saturday, we got another system. Honestly, I think there's a good chance we're going to see 2 to 5 centimeters of snow, maybe more, and that is including the lower mainland in Metro Vancouver.
Oh, I think it's been a while, so that's really welcome news, Dick.
And now I feel like you're really going to hold me to it, but I think
bet.
we're looking at, I definitely think we're looking at that.
Okay, thank you.
You bet.
And there are growing worries about the Omicron variant, and they've upended holiday travel plans for many Canadians. But it's also prolonged the economic struggle that tourism-dependent destinations have been dealing with. As Salima Shivji shows us, one such place that's starving for visitors is Goa in India, with its unusually empty beaches.
This is Goa in peak tourist season. Perfect weather, beautiful beaches, only this is anything but normal. These beaches should be full right now, but the pandemic has dealt a severe blow to this Indian state heavily dependent on tourism. The industry practically shuttered, with nearly a 70% dip in what usually comes in from tourists. One silver lining, there are Indians who are traveling, wanting a break from pandemic life. But this was supposed to be the year that international tourism bounced back after 2 terrible years and 2 lockdowns. But that new COVID variant is making things very uncertain, and that worries the state's director of tourism.
In fact, we were expecting a good season this year, but charters also were booked. But with this new restrictions coming in for this new COVID strain, it again has taken a hit, so charters also have been cancelled.
Those international charter flights usually bring more than a third of tourists from abroad to visit Goa, and the economic pain is being felt all around. Virtually everybody you speak with says these last 2 years have been excruciating, and we're really missing the tourists.
Oh, like blue water and nice to see.
Like fisherman and tour guide Eugenio Gonzalez, who really misses the good old days when the beaches were packed.
I feel very bad now because Nothing to do. Now I have no much work, so whatever get small work now with some Indian tourists for like 1 hour trip, then come back.
And there's not much for those dependent on tourist dollars to do except hope and pray the variant won't force more restrictions and that this tourist season can bounce back. Salima Shivji, CBC News, Goa.
This time of hope, the memories we share.
When we come back, more from Joshua Hislop and the original song he composed for us to mark CBC Vancouver's 35th annual Food Bank Day broadcast.
The Last Wish program is geared towards palliative patients that are either in residence and hospice, and we're trying to find out what is on their bucket list. What would they like to do? Is it a drive in the country? Is it trying to meet with somebody that they haven't seen for a long time?
Well, I'm a distant relative, so while I was talking to her son Pete, we just started chatting, and I talked to him about the wishes, and he says, "Oh my God, I have this wish I know that my mom would love. She's been coming here to Cape Bimet for 94 years of her life, and this summer she wasn't able to come." So as soon as I heard that, I piped up and I said, "I think I can help you."
We told her that we were taking her to Coquihalla, which is the place where, you know, that was her, in her heart, that was the place she liked the best on this earth. And she started there from the age of 4 and right up to the last time she went was the last wish. She was 99. And she knew she was coming to Coquihalla, but we had a little surprise as a family for her, is that we invited all the cousins and that we could find within 24 hours, because that's all the time that we were given to get this function going. So we had a lot of people on the front lawn when she arrived, and she was quite surprised.
Her life expectancy was not more than a week or so, and she made it to almost 3 months. So, I mean, we're very happy that we could be there for, you know, something like that. And in the meantime, we've granted 5 other wishes, but hers was a really special start for us, and it's a great motivator.
It's to finish a full life in a very fulfilling way. Is that she had the chance, and not maybe many people do, is to say goodbye to her closest relatives on her terms and in a very good way. She was in pretty good spirits, and her health was a little better that day. Than she had good days and bad days. Just happened to be a very, very good day for her, and she had a chance to say farewell to all her close relatives. You know, with a little glass of wine and a little conversation, and always a little humor with that. So she was totally ecstatic, and so were we.
Hi, I'm Amy Bell, and here's what's in your CBC Vancouver inbox.
The Push International Performing Arts Festival returns. Enjoy theater, dance, music, and multimedia by local, national, and international artists. Visit pushfestival.ca for tickets and more information. And stream holiday episodes of your favorite CBC shows like Schitt's Creek and The Great Canadian Baking Show with the free CBC Gem app. Check it out at gem.cbc.ca.
Joshua Hislop is one of 9 artists who contributed to CBC Vancouver's 35th annual Food Bank Day broadcast. The fundraiser has now brought in more than $2.5 million thanks to viewers like you. Joshua's original song is perfect for a quiet, introspective mood. Have a listen.
Oh, hello, CBC. My name's Joshua Hislop, and I'm going to play a couple songs for you. The first one here is a song called A Simple Song, and I wrote this largely from inspiration from Wendell Berry's poems. And I wrote it for Christmas, so I hope you enjoy it. It goes like this. I watch the snow come down. I watch the snow come down, and it falls quietly, and it leaves nothing out, and I watch the snow come down. And I feel it in the air, I feel it in the air. Oh, this time of hope, the memories we share, I can feel it in the air. Now I've heard it in the trees, I've heard it in the trees. It's the gentle sound of love and joy and peace. I can hear it in the trees. So I sing a simple song. I sing a simple song. May your hearts be full, may your days be long. Merry Christmas to you all. May your hearts be full, may your days be long. Merry Christmas to you all. May your hearts be full, may your days be long. Merry Christmas to you all.
The last 12 months have touched all of us, from dealing with COVID-19 to dealing with devastating weather events. It's been a year of records, of celebration, of loss and remembrance. And while everyone will have their own choices, here are a few of the photos that captured Canada's year in pictures. That's it for our show tonight. Thanks for being with us. We leave you now with some beautiful shots of the holiday lights at Van Dusen Gardens. Have a good night.